Hello everyone, it's Lawrence here from Unicorn Reviews with the ASUS ROG Swift or the PG278Q monitor. Now, monitor reviews, they're usually pretty straightforward. You just tell a little bit about brightness, how reflective they are, color accuracy, what inputs you get, backlight bleeding, all the usual monitor review things. But with the ASUS PG278Q ROG Swift, it's something completely different because now we have G-Sync, so we have to figure out if that's any good. We have a 144 Hz refresh rate, so is that any good? Do you even need that high refresh rate? And we also have a widescreen Quad HD resolution, so that's 4 times 720p. And so this monitor really means business. Now, as you would know from the Republic of Gamers branding all over it, the Swift is made for gaming. It's a flagship ASUS monitor with which they show what they can do if you're willing to spend big, because it's not a cheap monitor. So let's start with the packaging. The screen comes in a giant box with the stands already mounted. You get a DisplayPort cable because that's the only input for this monitor. You get a power cable with a little power brick, and also a USB 3.0 cable for the 2-port USB 3 hub on the back of the panel. The hard foam is thick and plentiful enough to protect the screen against most shipping companies, but you know what they're all like, right? So let's start with the product tour on the front of the screen. So you get a 27-inch 144 Hz 2560 by 1440 WQHD G-Sync screen, and it has very slim bezels, as you can see. Now, ASUS says they're 6mm, but that's not exactly right because there is a little black border on the inside and another metal border around the outside. So in reality, you're looking at 12mm of bezel. Other than the ASUS branding on the bottom and the 5 icons in the bottom right for the buttons on the back, there's not much to be seen on the monitor. On the back, again, very little to be seen, just some ventilation holes for the G-Sync module and the panel itself. On the back, we find very little things. So obviously we have the 5 buttons, one of which is a 5-way, so D-pad plus click joystick, and then 4 buttons with simple functionality to control a very simple menu. I'll go into that later. But there's just a few vents to keep the panel and the G-Sync module cool. That's pretty much it. Now, having the buttons on the back really helps with aesthetics from the front and keeping everything nice and slim, but it's not exactly the most handy thing in the world if you have a multi-screen setup. Now, as I already said, input is very limited. You just get one single DisplayPort in. Now, this is because this G-Sync module, the NVIDIA G-Sync module, doesn't support anything else. You do though get a USB 3 hub, but because it's so awkwardly placed, you won't really be using it. So last but not least, on the back there's also a VESA mount for when the amazing stand it comes with isn't quite good enough for you. Now, with the standard stand, you get 12 centimeters of height adjustment, 25 degrees of tilt, 120 degrees of swivel, and 19 degrees of rotation for those who like that to do coding or writing, if that's how you like to work. On the bottom we find a red LED ring, but you can turn that off if you're not really into that. Now, other than turning that ring on and off, the menu doesn't really do much. All you can really change is brightness and contrast, but this thing goes really bright, so I only use it at 10% brightness. Contrast is very good. You can also set color temperature, different languages. You can even set how transparent this menu is, but the most cool thing with the menu and the screen itself is simply just how quickly it starts up. There's no loading splash screen or anything. It's just you push the button, the monitor is on. That simple. You get very good color reproduction. Viewing angles are amazing for a TN panel, and there's very little color distortion when you tilt or swivel the panel. Now, this panel has a matte finish, so it's not a glass or very glossy finish, which doesn't really make colors pop, but it also means it won't act like a mirror with lower screen brightness, which is really cool for gaming. And if you're going to do very long gaming sessions, you might want slightly lower brightness just to save your eyes a little bit. One of the things that's pretty special with this monitor is the Game Plus overlay, and it allows you to show a crosshair without letting your PC know, which is also known as cheating, but I'm sure plenty of professional gamers use this when training and stuff, because it is pretty handy when you're playing hardcore matches and you can just completely cheat. Pretty cool stuff. But you also get a countdown timer, so if your mom or your wife just called you that dinner's ready and you just need a few more minutes, you can set how many more minutes you want, but in quite big intervals of at least half an hour. So, well, half an hour, 40 minutes, 50 that way. So you can't really set it to 5 minutes or 6 minutes and a half, that sort of stuff. So with all the physical stuff and the menu stuff out of the way, it's time to talk about the image quality. Now, I've already said that I really like the panel and the colors it produces, because for TN, it is pretty good. Now, one of the minor things, if you set it to really low brightness and with a very bright background though, in the bottom right there can be a bit of a darker zone there, but overall there's very little background bleeding and very even backlight. So of course with an ROG product, the most important thing is how good is it for gaming. And so this brings us to the gaming bit. So does a 140 Hz G-Sync panel make you the best player ever? And for this, I decided to do a little bit of an experiment on myself, with only myself playing CSGO, actually playing 20 rounds of CSGO, so that's at least 160 games, which was quite boring actually. So I played 10 rounds on the ROG Swift and then another 10 on my old LG monitor. The results you see on your screen probably won't be the same for everyone, because with the ROG, my kill-death ratio was actually 39% higher, which is insane. It really is insane. It kind of blew me away, to be honest. I expected to see like a little difference, so 5 to 10%, and then say how small that difference is and that there's a bigger deviation on the same monitor between rounds as there is between the both monitors, but 39% is a lot. I have to say though that being quite terrible at first-person shooters probably helped that score get really high as well. Now, of course, I also did some racing, because that's pretty much my thing, you know, racing games, racing sims. And so while I found that higher FPS and higher refresh rates obviously, and the G-Sync make everything a lot smoother, and you know, it helped you stay more consistent, actual best lap times didn't really go down, but that's also because the track will still be in exactly the same position as it was last lap. Whereas when you play first-person shooters or MOBAs, you know, your opponents, they change positions, so being able to quickly react to something new in the environment is a lot more important than in a racing game. So in the end, as a quick roundup, what matters with this monitor, and the only thing that should decide whether or not you buy it, is if you can afford it or not, because as I said, it is pretty expensive, and it might be slightly smarter to buy other offerings. So AMD's FreeSync is coming up, so yeah, it will be very interesting to see how that competes, because Nvidia does charge $100 for the G-Sync module, which kind of bumps up prices a lot. Now, before I tested it, I was reading and listening to people who tried G-Sync, and they said it was amazing, it was a total game changer. It was like swapping out a hard drive for an SSD to, you know, your experience of your computer use. And I have to completely disagree with that, because sure, it is more fluent, everything feels more realistic, way more immersion, and also not at all the type of screen fatigue you get with slow refresh rate monitors. And I kind of really feel bad for console gamers now who are locked to 30 FPS now that I'm used to 144. It's awesome, don't get me wrong here guys, but it's probably not worth 500 euros more than the screen you were going to buy in the first place. So guys, like this video if you liked it, subscribe for more, and please leave a comment to let me know what you think about G-Sync, FreeSync, Adaptive Sync, the whole sync range. Can your graphics card actually support resolutions like Quad HD? So yeah, all of that very, very interesting. Let me know in the comment guys. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching.